The Great Debaters Contest is powered by Blaze, by Safaricom, the Youth Network.
10 regions, hundreds of schools, and tons of fiery debates, and it all comes down to this. Welcome to the Nationals of the 2017 Great Debaters Contest. I am your host, Mariam Bishar.
And I am Austin Yumbok. Today we have Garissa High School going against Alliance High School, and the motion on matters accountability is corruption is the key undoing to development in Africa. Mariam, do you think they'll take it away?
I think they're very capable. We'll have them take the stage now. First proposer, you have 3 minutes.
Proposing the motion, Suleiman Abdulrazak. Corruption is the key to undoing in development. Is the key undoing to development in Africa. Let me start by giving an idea of what the motion is about. Corruption is the dishonest or the fraudulent behavior by a person entrusted with the power of authority, often for personal benefit. To undo is to cause the downfall or ruin of. Development is the systematic use of technical and scientific skills to meet specific objectives. Hope and Chekulo in their volumes stated that although the levels of corruption vary from rare to widespread to systematic, most of the African countries are found in the range of widespread to systematic. Corruption in Africa has reached cancerous levels. It resulted to misuse of the scarce resources. And what are the results? The result is the economy is affected. The entire economy is affected through multiplier effect. Corruption has also reduced the effectiveness of aid flow through diversion of funds from their intended projects. Just like many other developing countries, Ghana has tremendously benefited from aid agencies such as UNESCO, UNICEF, USAID, and etc. But these agencies are increasingly becoming more concerned about their aid foster development ending up in the pockets of few and unproductive public expenditure. They are more concerned about good governance. And in the cases of bad governance, some of these agencies scale back their assistance. A situation is where the USAID have withdrew its 2.1 billion health assistance due to corruption and integrity issues in the Afia House. Africa, our continent, we love it, but it has attracted the lowest rate of direct investment in the world due to corruption. A recent study of corruption index states that a twofold increase in the level of corruption increases the marginal tax by over 20%. And a 1% increase in the marginal tax reduces the foreign investment by 5%. It's crystal clear to a man of common understanding that corruption is the key to undoing to development in Africa. An end to corruption is my plan. If you join me, friends, I'm sure we can, of course. Thank you.
Opposition, you have 3 minutes to make your opening statements.
Corruption is not the key undoing to development in Africa. Greetings to you all, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Martin Kioko from the Alliance High School, here to oppose the motion that states corruption is the key undoing to development in Africa. People, let us look at things clearly. Corruption is not the key undoing. The key undoing to development in Africa is the poor policies, the poor leadership, the poor governance that we have in Africa. Countries in Africa lack the policies to develop themselves. It's not because of corruption. Corruption just comes in because of the poor policies, because of the poor leadership, because of the poor governance. People are not able to reach the levels of sustainable development, to reach the levels of economic development, because they did not plan themselves, they did not put things clearly. Just to shed some light to this motion, corruption is the legitimate use of public power to benefit the personal interest, the personal greed, the private affairs. Key is something that is major, something that is predominant, something that is main. And undoing is something that causes a downfall, something that brings us down, something that causes a ruin. and development is growth or advancement. So these are the things that are pulling us down, the policies that we have. Africa, for example, has its main backbone as agriculture. If we put technology in agriculture, have things that will help us to push the agricultural sector to help us pull Africa up, then we'll not be underdeveloped. It is not about corruption. It's about these small things that we're not looking at. It's about the education sector, the health sector. If Africa can provide health facilities that are free for every taxpayer, then we are able to be developed. Because these people have what they deserve. It is not because they are corrupt. It's because they don't have the leaders who help them. When we call someone a mad person, it's simply because of the head, not the fingers. Let us look at Africa as a person. The problem is not this small thing called corruption. It's the head that makes Africa mad. It's that leadership. If we make strategies, if we make policies that will help us to move forward, then we'll be able to move forward. Africa is in the lowest degree of international trade in the world economy. It is not yet there because we don't have policies that help us to advance in our economy. We don't have leaders who are helping us to guide us. This is the way to go. Let's make this policy to help Africa. Let's make this government policy to help us go in front. We're just waiting there and blaming it on corruption. People, let us not insult our intelligence. Let us not lie to ourselves. Let us look at the matter at hand and not refute the facts that we have. 48.5% of Africans live below $1.75 in a day. That is living below the poverty line, 48.5%. We have a country like Netherlands. They reclaimed land from the sea. That's why they are growing flowers. They are the highest exporter of flowers because they reclaimed land from the sea. We have land all over in Kenya, in Africa, but we're not getting policies to help us go to it. These people made a policy and it helps them to push. Dubai doesn't have the best climate in the world, but they produce some food that is even Africa doesn't produce. But we have the land. We do not have the policies. We have the resources. Let us make the policies. Corruption is the least. We need to change our policies. Albert Einstein once said, you cannot do the same thing over and over again, using the same way and expect different results. If you expect the same results, then you're a madman. Thank you very much.
We're ready for rebuttals now. Gentleman from Garissa, you have 3 minutes.
Poor policies, poor leadership, health problems are not the greatest undoing to development in Africa. Those are not my words. Those are the words of my brother. Poor leadership. When we say poor leadership, what brings poor leadership? In Kenya, for example, almost every county has a governor, and almost every governor is accused of stealing the money, if I can use that word, stealing, the money of the county, because it is corruption. The poor leadership, my friend has said, is brought about the stealing of public money and making fake policies and poor policies so that the money can be stolen from the Kenyan people. Proposing the motion that says corruption is key to undoing development in Africa is I, Adin Garone from the Garissa High School, with the following points. Inferior public infrastructure. The allocation of public procurement contract through a corrupt system leads to inferior public infrastructure and services. For instance, a corrupt bureaucrat might allow the use of cheap substandard materials in the construction of significant buildings and bridges. In December 2016, a church collapsed in Nigeria, claiming the lives of 160 people. As we speak today, it was just recently that a bridge collapsed in Sigiri, Budalangi constituency, the larger Busia County. The worth of the bridge was 1.2 billion Kenyan shillings. And before the bridge collapsed, 2 weeks before the bridge collapsed, the president of the country was there, promising the people of the good and abundant and the good things that the bridge is going to bring to the people of the region. The people were very happy, and they were dreaming about the development that they will get, how transport will become easy. But their dreams were shattered in one day when they saw that the bridge has collapsed. It is because of the use of cheap substandard materials. It is because of poor policies. It is because of using materials that are not worth. And this is corruption. And also, corruption also reduces the economy of a country. In many African countries and many African leaders currently today, as we speak, are accused of having foreign accounts outside the country they live. the money that was supposed to be used for development is shifted to other accounts outside their country. This one adds up to their own economy. For instance, also in Kenya, we have many scandals where money have been stolen. One of them being the major and the famous Eurobond scandal, where 200 billion Kenyan shillings, up to date as we speak, cannot be accounted to where they have been used. Up to date cannot be accounted to where they have been. And such kind of scandals are the ones which are making the investors to run from our countries because they don't want to play the risk of putting their business in danger. But we love our Africa, we love our home, we love our country. But can we deny the fact that corruption is greater than doing to development in Africa? Thank you very much.
Alliance High School, let's hear your rebuttal. You have 3 minutes.
Clement Nyiro, Alliance High School. Ellen Johnstone, the first female president of Africa, once said, Africa is not poor, it is poorly managed. Alexander the Great, who to me is one of the best people, somebody I admire, once said this, that I do not fear a pride of lions led by a sheep. I fear a pack of sheep led by a lion. Now, I want you to get these two quotes similar. People lived in different timelines, but they believe that the head is everything. Look at it this way. The second proposer put it clearly that it is because of poor policies, because of poor leadership. And he said that this is corruption. You know, our side, we are not saying that corruption is not there. We are saying that it is there, but that is just a manifestation. We need to go behind. We need to see where it starts from. Afia House, because the funding was denied, it was reduced. This is because, just imagine Kenya where we could see this is the money that has been given by the USAID, this is the money that has been given by UKAID, and this is how we are going to use it. Imagine if that document was transparent, it was available to you, it was a Wikipedia page. That would mean that no man will dare touch that money, because they know if you touch it, somebody knows. It is because our leaders have not set in place proper guidelines on how to fight this thing. Now, we are attacking the head. I always say, when you want to kill a bull, yes, you go for the neck, but first remember, sharpen your knife. Sharpen it so sharp that when you come to the bull, it's just a single strike. That's what we are asking for. We are not asking for people to look at the manifestation. We are not asking for you to look at what is all over in the air. We are asking you to see what is behind the pictures. We're asking you to see about the governance. 1982, Panama was led by Manuel Noriega. In his 7 years being a dictator, Panama Canal construction came to a complete halt. Fast forward to 2014 when Carlos Varela came into power, the European Union, the United States, gave a total of 1.2 million euros to that country. That is the biggest canal in the world right now. It hosts 99% of all ships, trade ships in the world. I'm looking at leadership. I'm looking at the first and not the end. I'm looking at where are we, why do we face corruption? It's because people are not standing up. Everybody always says in Kenya that once you go to vote, go vote not with your stomach, but with your head. Why is saying to me? Because I believe that is where everything begins from. That is the start. Civil wars, people don't fight because the poorest person has an argument. People fight because the one who leads is acting like a child. And that is what we need to curb. We need to have good leadership. We need to have people who lead very well. That we can get development in Kenya. Thank you.
The proposition have been asked, are there not any other factors that have led to the lack of development in Africa? And the opposition have been asked simply, why are our economies unstable? We'll have them respond. Third proposer, you have 3 minutes.
My question is there any country in the continent of Africa that is marked as developed? That is an assignment to you, the audience. But personally, I have never heard of, or I have never even seen a country in the continent of Africa that is officially referred to as developed. Proposing the motion is Suleiman Ali Salat. Corruption is the key to undoing development. Is the key undoing to development in Africa. Let me respond to the question that why only corruption and there's no any other factor. We are saying corruption is the key, but there are other factors, but corruption is the key. If you want to undertake anything within a country, if you want to implement any policy, then you must have resources, you must have money, and you must have all that it takes so that you implement that thing. But when you eat away the resources, when you eat away the money you wanted to implement those things, then the other factors become mere things that should not be talking about. If I may go to my first point is that poverty as an effect of corruption. According to the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary, poverty is the state of being extremely poor. And this is what most of African countries are undergoing. And this is simply because of corruption. You remember in 2013, according to the Transparency International report, which country was named as the world poorest country in the world? It was the Democratic Republic of Congo. And this is an African country. And this is because of the poor policies the people of Africa are making. Look, take an example of a lorry driver along Mombasa-Nairobi road. In the morning, when he gets into his bus so that he looks for something small, on his way, a police officer tells him to stop on the way and ask for him something small. The popular phrase, they call it, lipa kitu kidogo or give a chai. I know the meaning. You lift something small. Even the lorry driver, he has not even earned a single coin. And a police officer is asking for him 100 shilling. Can you imagine of such scenario? That person, at the long run, because of the high charges the police are asking for through bribes, he might quit the business and he might end up being poor in eternity. And that is what haunts Africa, and that is what causes underdevelopment in Africa. On to my second point is political instability, crisis, and terrorism as a result of corruption. You heard of the famous, you heard of the Great Westgate attack, and you heard of the Garissa attack. Where was the Ministry for Internal Security? Where was the Ministry for Defense when all this was happening? It is because they have slept on their work. They were supposed to be guarding every route to our country. They were supposed to be guarding the border of the country, but they have failed. The terrorists, they are giving out money so that they can get into the interests. For example, the issue on Westgate attack, it was said that the attackers were there in that mall for several days before that. How were they there and they can carry out such result? It is because that they have bribed those people who were there and they were known that they were there. It's because of that corruption that all that has happened. Let's talk of the poor education plans as a result of corruption. You have heard of a lot of it. You have heard of before the coming of Matiang'i, the students were sold examination papers. Examination papers were sold to the students, and that is what has ruined the education of Africa. Thank you.
Alliance Highlights, your response to the question. You have 3 minutes.
My name is James Paul from Alliance High School, and I'm very happy to answer your question, Julie from Motangulu Girls, yes? You asked why the economy is unstable. Well, and then you told me not to say leaders. And how, I can ask you one question. How is it possible that you can talk about corruption excluding leaders while the leaders themselves are partaking in the corruption? And then you said that corruption is not a small thing. We agree with you. It's not a small thing. But the direction that our argument is taking is corruption is not a small thing, but it's not a major thing. It's not the major cause of underdevelopment in Africa. One of the causes of underdevelopment in Africa, if I can just elaborate, would be quality education. Nelson Mandela once said that if you wanted to change the world, education is the best thing that you can use. And we can see that that is what people are beginning to realize. If I can just talk about quality education, I just say that, yes, in classes we are learning about our books or physics or chemistry, but that is not just quality education. Education is not what happens in class. education is something that we go through every day, and quality education is something like this. I'd like to say that our judges agree with us. Our judges, thank you so much for being on our side. By you taking your chance to come sit here and judge our skills on debating, you're teaching us how to be diplomatic leaders in future. This is quality education. The Sustainable Development Goals, you're enforcing them on us because this is what we're going to use to develop Africa later. Now, you're talking about corruption being a major cause of underdevelopment, but you're just seeing the corruption. A principal I once heard used to say that if you see a tortoise on a tree, someone must have put it there. What we're trying to say is corruption is an issue, but we need to look at the head. It's very myopic of you, very short-sighted for you to look at corruption and say corruption is the issue. Corruption is a bad thing. No, you need to look at where corruption emanates from. Now, this is why we have people like, I don't know his second name, but his name is Fred, and he's a guy who founded the African Leadership Academy because he believed that in ALA, you go learn very vigorous curriculum, but then he also thought that skills are what you need, some certain characteristics that cannot be taught just in class with a textbook, but other things that you need to change Africa. So another thing would be the lack of initiative that some of the people have. But I ask you, how can you blame people for having lack of initiative if they don't know, if they're not in the know? The lack of initiative lacks from lack of good education. This is what I'm really trying to emphasize on you guys today. I mean, how do you expect someone to do something about development, someone who is not well educated? The lack of initiative, where does one begin? One does not know what development is. He doesn't know where its roots are. He doesn't know what brings underdevelopment about. He doesn't even know if development is a good or a bad thing. Please, let's focus on education, SDG number 4. I'll just leave you with a quote. Mara Angelou, an American poet, said, "When you know better, you do better." Thank you.
Final statements now. Garissa High School, you have 1 minute.
Let's take cases of corruption in Kenya, for example. You have heard of the NYS scandal that has taken 791 million unaccounted for. You have heard of the famous wheelbarrow issue in Bungoma County, where 10 wheelbarrows were bought 109 Kenyan shillings per wheelbarrow. You have heard of the hospital gate in Nyamira County, which was built by 8 million, and also the Facebook account in Kirinyaga account, which was opened with 2 million. Can you imagine that? I would have opened that bank account for free. In Mark Dolly's BBC interview with Salif Johnson Allen, the president of Liberia, she said that maybe I should have sacked the whole government when I was coming into power, when she has seen the kind of corruption in a country. Corruption is what destroys some of our greatest national assets, the enthusiasm, idealism, and sympathy of the youth. If idealism and cynicism turns to be Zionism, then not only the political stability, but the economy of the country will also be affected. And in the long run, the democratic development of the country will also be affected. Thank you.
Thank you. Alliance High School, you also have 1 minute.
I hate arguing in circles. And I'm a patriot of this nation. I'm a patriot of the world being a global village. And that is why my stance, my team's stance, is for each and every one of us to be able to recognize and to fight all forms of corruption. True, corruption is something big. She said it, Julie. But what is the backdrop? Question that you should be asking yourself. It's not just the light that is producing the light. You ask yourself, where does the current come from? Because that is the bigger picture. Education. Switzerland has the best education. Surprisingly enough, it is the least developed. It is the least corrupt country. education, corruption, leadership, corruption. We are saying fight these big things, fight these things that hide themselves, manifest themselves in darkness. You win against corruption and you get developed and empowered. That's what we stand for. Thank you.
Garissa, Suleiman, you talked to Adam, you talked about church collapsing in Nigeria, talked about bridge collapsing somewhere in Western Kenya. And my question is, could you give us serious issues to do with corruption in Africa? I believe a bridge collapsing and a church collapsing is a manifestation of a serious corrupt practice in the government. Take us to the serious issue, not to the manifestation of the issue. Salat, what's poverty? Poverty is the state of being poor. You are confusing me even further because you're taking me to the Oxford Dictionary and say poverty is the state of being poor. Could you give me a concrete definition of poverty? Took me to the Democratic Republic of Congo and you talked about the country being poor and you said it's a question of policies and then you mentioned corruption. And my question is, how do all these things tie together? DRC, policies, poverty, corruption. My advice is limit your examples, be sure. In some cases, you can just take one example and do an in-depth analysis of that example. Basically, a fair debate.
The motion is very broad. We're talking about development in Africa. So there's two things that one needs to do when we're talking about such broad topics. One is you need to break it down because as we know, Africa is not a country, and it's certainly not a group of homogeneous countries. So I think one of the things that I'd really appreciate is, more depth around the country analysis. A lot of the examples focused on Kenya. Sometimes we even went down to the county level. I never got a full sense of Africa and its diversity and the different ways in which corruption does or doesn't play out. I think also benchmarking is really important. So we spent a lot of time talking about what's not happening in Africa, where corruption stands, but it would have been good to hear, so where there is no corruption or where there is good leadership, which are some of those countries? And I know if you do your research, you'll find some of the Nordic countries rank very high under Transparency International, etc. So for those who are saying that the issue is good leadership, the lack of leadership, it would have been good to see an example of when there's solid leadership, when there's solid policies, what happens, so that you can complete your argument fully with examples.
Garissa High School, the judges awarded you 60%. Kindly give them a round of applause. Alliance High School, the judges awarded you 69%, making you the winners of this debate. Give them a round of applause as well.
Very well. A big congratulations to the two teams on stage. Of course, it's the final round for the competition, and we urge you as our viewers to stay tuned as it gets hotter and hotter. I am Austin Nyumbok.
And I am Mariam Bishar. We'll see you next time.
The Great Debaters Contest is powered by Blaze, by Safaricom, the Youth Network.